Welcome to Global World Watch. Please subscribe and press the bell icon for more updates. In spring 2018, the Trump administration's announcement of heavy tariffs on steel, aluminum, and potentially autos hit Canada's auto industry like a shockwave. For decades, free trade with the U.S. was the backbone of Canadian auto manufacturing. The threat of a 25% tariff on vehicles and parts felt like a betrayal, shaking the industry to its core. Assembly lines in Windsor and boardrooms in Toronto were gripped by disbelief and dread. The timing was brutal. Canada's auto sector was already under pressure from global competition and the shift to electric vehicles. The tariffs, justified as a national security measure, directly attacked the logic of North American manufacturing. Cross-border supply chains, built over years and billions of dollars, suddenly seemed fragile. Workers in towns like Oshawa and Windsor faced the real fear of losing stable middle-class jobs. Union leaders warned of catastrophic job losses, and anxiety spread through communities dependent on the industry. Industry and government scrambled, arguing that Canadian and U.S. auto sectors were partners, not rivals. Cars assembled in either country often contained parts that crossed the border multiple times. Tariffs threatened to disrupt production, raise costs, and weaken the entire North American auto platform. Despite logical arguments, the threat from Washington didn't fade, forcing everyone to brace for a hostile new trade reality. The century-old partnership was suddenly at risk, and the future had never looked more uncertain. Before the crisis, the U.S. and Canadian auto industries functioned as a single, integrated system. The 1965 Auto Pact and NAFTA allowed vehicles and parts to move freely, enabling specialized, efficient plants on both sides of the border. A car's engine might be built in the U.S., its transmission in Canada, and its wiring from Mexico, crossing borders multiple times before final assembly. Just-in-time manufacturing relied on seamless border crossings, with the Ambassador Bridge and Detroit-Windsor Tunnel acting as vital arteries. Canada's auto sector was export-driven. 85% of vehicles built here went to the U.S. This deep integration fueled jobs and prosperity, but also made Canada vulnerable to U.S. policy shifts. Workforces, unions, and strategies were intertwined across the border. A decision in Detroit could instantly impact workers in Ontario. The threat of tariffs jeopardized this entire ecosystem, risking the breakup of a highly successful industrial partnership. The model's strength was also its Achilles heel. The moment tariffs hit steel and aluminum, costs for Canadian manufacturers soared. Automakers and suppliers faced 25% higher steel and 10% higher aluminum prices, costs they couldn't absorb. Some passed costs to customers, others saw profits vanish, and smaller suppliers faced immediate crisis. Uncertainty froze investment. Companies paused plant upgrades and delayed contracts, fearing their products would be priced out of the U.S. market. Workers faced layoffs and a climate of fear as the threat of tariffs on finished vehicles put thousands of jobs at risk. Families worried about mortgages and futures as stable careers suddenly seemed precarious. The just-in-time supply chain faltered. Border delays, new paperwork, and inspections added friction and unpredictability. Some companies stockpiled parts, driving up storage costs and eroding efficiency. The seamless flow of goods that defined North American auto manufacturing was replaced by delays, higher expenses, and chaos. The industry's integrated engine began to sputter. The damage was immediate, and the uncertainty was just as toxic as the tariffs themselves. The entire sector was paralyzed, waiting for clarity that never came. The crisis exposed just how fragile the system had become. Amid the turmoil, Fiat Chrysler Automobiles, later Stellantis, took a different path. While others lobbied for relief, FCA quietly shifted its production strategy, reducing reliance on Canadian supply chains. The company invested billions in U.S. and Mexican plants, aiming to avoid tariffs by producing closer to the American market. This pivot signaled a long-term move away from Canada, with future investments and new models heading south. Stellantis used the crisis to accelerate changes it may have planned anyway, protecting itself from political risk. By the time the USMCA trade deal arrived, Stellantis had already locked in its new footprint, It was a ruthless strategic maneuver, turning crisis into opportunity. The decisions made by automakers rippled through Canada's auto supply chain. Hundreds of smaller suppliers, dependent on contracts with big assembly plants, were hit first. As automakers shifted production, Canadian suppliers lost bids and contracts to U.S. and Mexican competitors. Downsizing, plant closures, and bankruptcies swept through Ontario's industrial heartland. The impact extended to entire communities. Lost jobs, falling tax revenues, and declining home values. Local businesses suffered, and public services felt the strain. Thousands of skilled workers faced unemployment, many with specialized skills hard to transfer elsewhere. The social fabric of towns like Windsor and Oshawa was stretched thin. The crisis revealed the fragility of relying so heavily on a single industry and trading partner. The Canadian government responded with intense diplomacy and retaliatory tariffs. Officials lobbied Washington, arguing that tariffs would hurt both countries, but their influence was limited. Retaliatory tariffs targeted U.S. goods, hoping to create political pressure, but had little effect on American policy. Meanwhile, companies made irreversible investment decisions, shifting production out of Canada. Government subsidies and support programs couldn't guarantee stable U.S. market access. The crisis exposed the limits of Canada's power to protect its economy from U.S. decisions. The new USMCA deal removed the immediate threat, but stricter rules and broken trust remained. The damage was done, and the lesson was clear. Political risk was now a permanent reality. The tariff crisis was a wake-up call, exposing Canada's vulnerability from over-reliance on the U.S. market. Decades of industrial strategy built on stable U.S. access was suddenly in question. Companies like Stellantis adapted quickly, shifting investment to reduce risk, while Canada scrambled to restore the old relationship. The lesson: Canada can't count on corporate loyalty or historical precedent. Trade diversification is now essential. Canada must build stronger ties with Europe, Asia, and beyond. Competing for future investment means addressing business costs, regulations, and talent pipelines. Strategic public investments are needed to anchor new industries, especially in electric vehicles and batteries. The crisis was painful, but it could spark a more resilient, innovative Canadian economy, better prepared for an unpredictable world.